Hello, grade 8. So today we'll be moving on to the last topic of this chapter, which will be dividing fractions and mixed numbers. So first of all, let's go through a little bit of vocabulary. First thing I'm going to talk about is reciprocals. So over here, reciprocals, we briefly talked about it last year in grade 7, but if you remember what a reciprocal is, basically it is two fractions and then two fractions whose product is equal to 1. That is the definition of what a reciprocal is. So basically, it is two fractions who, when multiplied to each other, the product will give 1. And there's only one way that happens. There's only one way. So just a quick example. For example, if I had a fraction, let's say 2 over 3, and I multiplied it by its reciprocal, that is 3 over 2, the product will be 6 over 6, which is equal to 1. Okay, so that is when the top and the bottom. So in easy terms, it is basically when you swap the numerator and the denominator. Numerator and denominator. Denominator. So that is the simple definition of reciprocal. Basically, you swap the top and the bottom of a fraction. So why do we need to know about reciprocals? Because when we are multiplying and dividing fractions, when we need to divide fractions, we need to multiply it by its reciprocal instead. So let's go into our first example. Let's go straight into a multiplying of a fraction, dividing a fraction by a fraction. So let's go into A. Let's say that I have 5 over 9, a fraction, and I wanted to divide it by another fraction, 2 over 3. Okay, so we cannot divide fractions really easily. It doesn't really make sense. A fraction divided by a fraction, we can't really use common sense to know what it is. And so instead of dividing by a fraction, we're going to multiply by the reciprocal. Okay, we're going to instead of doing this, we're going to multiply the reciprocal reciprocal reciprocal. Okay, we want to multiply the reciprocal. So I'm going to rewrite the division as 5 over 9. This time I'm going to change it to times 3 over 2. You see how I have swapped the top and the bottom, and I have changed the division into times. Okay, so now that we have done this, there's a little bit of simplifying that we could do. 3 and the 9 both are multiples of 3, and so I can simplify this becomes 1 and this becomes 3, and so I have 5 over 3 times 1 over 2, and so we are left with 5 over 6, and that is the simplest form. Okay, so let's go into another example. Let's do another example. This time let's multiply b over here. Let's do b. We have a fraction and we want to divide by a whole number. Okay, so let's say we have a fraction over here and we are dividing by a whole number 2. Now what happens with 2? Remember last lesson, instead of writing my 2 directly at the middle, I wrote it slightly to the top, and then you can sort of write an invisible 1 at the bottom. Now it looks like a fraction. We can change it to multiply by its reciprocal. Okay, we can swap the top and the bottom. So a whole number, its reciprocal will be 1 over that number instead. So it will now be 4 over 5, and then I'm going to multiply 1 over 2. Okay, I have swapped the top and the bottom, and I had changed the division into a multiply. And so now that I have done that, 4 times 1 and 5 over 2, there are some simplifying that I could do. 2 and 4 can be simplified. That becomes 2, this becomes 1, and so we have now 2 over 5 as the simplest form. Now what if we have a fraction, or we have mixed numbers divided by mixed numbers? Okay, so this time it will be mixed numbers instead, and very similar to before. If I can get this to 90, let me just make a line over here. Okay, so this time we're going to dividing mixed numbers over here. And so A, let's do 8 and 3/4 divided by 2 and 5 over 8. Okay, again, when we have a mixed number divided by a mixed number, it's really hard to just divide directly. And so we're going to change it into like a times, okay, into multiply. But before we do that, step one, similar to multiplying fractions and mixed numbers, we're going to change the mixed numbers into improper fractions. We want to turn to improper fraction. Okay, so let's do the first step. We're going to do 8 times 4, which is 32. 32 plus 3 is 35. So it's 35 at the top, and the bottom is still 4. And I'm just going to keep this as divide. I'm not going to skip any steps. 2 times 8 is 16. 16 plus 5 is 21. So we have 21 over 8. Now, when we get to this point, now we're going to swap the top and the bottom, and we're going to change the divide symbol into multiply. I'm going to multiply by its reciprocal rather than divide. So let's go ahead and rewrite this fraction expression. That's 35 over 4 times, okay, this is going to be times now, and it's going to be 8 over 21. I've swapped the top and the bottom. Now, most of these questions are fairly cleverly designed so that once you have swapped the top and the bottom, we can go ahead and see that there are some common factors that we can simplify. So 4 and 8, that becomes 1, and 8 becomes 2. 35 and 21 both have common factors of 7. Okay, they are multiples of 7. So 35 divided by 7 is 5. 21 divided by 7 is 3. And so let's go ahead and clean up this equation. I usually don't like directly finding the answer after crossing out things. So let's rewrite it. 5 over 1 times 2 over 3. Now I'm going to rewrite my answer clearly. 5 times 2 is 10 and over 3. And then I'm just going to quickly change that into a mixed number. That's going to be 3 and 1 over 3. Okay, so let's do one more example. Let's do one final example. And also, if a question asks you to approximate or estimate if you got your answer correct. What does it mean by estimate? Well, in estimating, I'm going to do this in orange over here. This will be the estimate part. 8 and 3/4 is close to 9. 2 and 5 over 8, I would say it's around 3. It's a little bit closer to 3, so it's approximately 9 divided by 3, which will give me 3. And now I'm going to check whether my answer is somewhat close to 3, and it's kind of correct, okay? I'm not saying it's going to be exactly correct. It's not going to be extremely close, but it's an estimate, okay? We're just seeing whether at least the place values align. So let's go into our last example. This time we have a mixed number divided by a whole number, okay? So we have 2 and 2 over 5 divided by a whole number 12. Okay, so first of all, we want to convert our mixed number into an improper fraction. So let's do the first step. 2 times 5 is 10 plus 2, that's going to be 12 over 5. And then I'm just going to rewrite that as divided by 12. I'm not going to make any changes. Now I'm going to swap the divide into times, and I'm going to multiply by its reciprocal. 12's reciprocal is 1 over 12. And so let's rewrite this. That's 12 over 5 multiplied by 1 over 12. Hey, and this is such an easy question because this 12 and the 12 will directly cancel out. And so our final answer is just 1 out of 5. Okay, so that is it for this lesson. Your homework will be over here. Exercise 5.4. 7 to 19 odd questions, then 28 to 34 even questions, and lastly 44, 45, and 46. And I will see you all next lesson. Goodbye.